Okay, I'm also going to go live stream so you guys can, follow me on the. I have a small presentation I made for the discussion today. Let me quickly share my screen here a bit. Perfect. Okay, great. Let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully you guys can see my screen. Let me change the layout a bit so you guys can see it bigger. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's quickly start. What I wanted to quickly discuss, there are some fast developing events and situation overall in terms of geopolitics in the Middle Eastern region. We know Ukraine has already been pretty hot, but from my interest standpoint, I am more of interested in how all these events are going to eventually impact what I call the region between India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. And because, in my kind of understanding, to me, that is eventually where a new conflict probably will start in future. The conflict in Middle East doesn't seem to be ending. I think it's going to only flare up, and we'll discuss a bit. But I think we might be headed for a new conflict zone at some point in time. God knows when, but very soon in India, Pakistan, Afghanistan region. And I'll talk about why I think so. But because I've been keeping a very close eye on the events, I'm very much interested in understanding that as the whatever we call the alignment across the world heats up, we already know there is an alignment between Russia, Iran, Pakistan, China, and North Korea, and India is quote unquote part of that alliance, but India kind of plays both sides. It tries to play both China as well as US. And apparently, I think the hope of the Indian administration is that this competition remains between China and US and it keeps getting the benefit from both sides. So, in this entire alignment, while the interests and where everybody is going to ally is very clear, the only unclear portion is India, and that's why I kind of feel that probably India is headed for a military conflict very time soon. But before we do that, there's a very interesting development that has happened. We saw in I would say a span of just 1 month, we saw the Indian foreign minister come to US, and then Putin come to India, then the Indian NSA going to Iran, and then today I just learned that the Indian foreign minister is in Russia. So there's a lot of this flurry of movements happening and discussions happening with these countries. And while all these things are happening, there's a very, very interesting development that has happened, which is that we saw that Houthis, which are a Yemeni rebel group, which is we know is backed by Iran, has started attacking certain ships which are crossing the Red Sea. And I'll talk about why that is a very, very significant development in this entire conflict that we have ongoing. Okay, that's a very nice visual, but how do I move ahead? And okay, I think it's just going to play out. And just let me move to the next slide. Oops. Okay, great. I'm having some technology challenges. Just sorry about this, guys. Let me see if I can reopen the stuff. Okay, great. Yeah. So before we understand why this is a very, very important issue is um, so this where my cursor is on the screen. This is Yemen, and they are basically attacking ships which are this is the Red Sea area. This is where they are attacking the ships. But to kind of understand the geopolitical implications of it, I think it's just important to quickly understand, how this global maritime choke points work. So this is a very nice map. You can see it online as well. These solid black lines are the primary global trade routes. These dotted lines are the secondary routes in case the primary ones are blocked. So as you can see, the main primary route is basically which connects the American continent to Europe and then to Asia. All of it kind of goes through this number 2 point, which is the Strait of first Gibraltar, Gibraltar, and then it's a very narrow strait, and then the ships basically then move into what we call Suez Canal and number 5, and that's next to Israel. And from there, from Suez Canal, once they pass that, it's a very, very narrow sphere where they almost kind of go in a lane. This whole area is the Red Sea that you see here from 5 till 6. And at 6, again, there is a choke point. It's called Bab el Mandeb Strait, or we call the choke point of the Red Sea. That is where the Houthis are basically creating a trouble. So it's a choke point because that narrow area there is hardly 17, I would say like 17 miles in breadth, but it's not 17 miles because you can't navigate all of it because traffic moves in lanes. It's hardly like 10-12 kilometer area in which those ships are moving. Some ships are moving, there's a lane going north south and the other lane is going from south to north. So it's very easy right up there, and I'll show you on the map how that looks. For anyone to kind of disrupt this entire trade route if they can start hitting the ships there. And Yemen is this. You see, this area is kind of sitting right up there, and then this kind of route goes from India, and this is the last choke point, which is the Malacca Straits or the Straits of Malacca. And again, why India is being wooed so relentlessly by US is because US wants India to play like a role here to kind of choke Malacca Straits if they have to in future conflicts. And but these are all the major choke points. And then there's another choke point here, number 7, that you see. That's the Strait of Hormuz. So if there are ships which are transitioning or connecting, let us say Iraq, Saudi Arabia to India, and then Southeast Asia and China, they can be choked right up here at number 7, which is the Strait of Hormuz. And then and this one, number 1, is basically the Panama Canal. And so if you have to basically take stuff from the west coast, let us say Seattle, to Europe, this is the route you have to take. Again, there are issues in Panama Canal as well. It's not threatened, I would say, by any of the countries per se as such, except maybe Brazil, which probably could be in the BRICS bucket. But Panama Canal has some other issues ongoing. It's kind of a very artificially constructed canal where the ships basically they use water from a lake to kind of pump up the height of the ships. And there are issues going on where the water in the lakes has kind of is drying up. So there could be other issues there where you could be naturally induced reasons why this canal might have some medium term impact on supply chains. So as you can see, if let us say somebody blocks number 2, which is Strait of Gibraltar, then the other alternate route is you have to go through the what it is called is the Cape of Good Hope, from through Africa. Or even if you choke number 5, which is the Suez Canal, or number 6, which is the Bab el Mandeb that we will just talk about, then the ships can't go this route. They'll have to take the secondary route. And there are different choke points even on the secondary routes. But like they basically add more cost and disruption to the supply chain. So hopefully, this is the basically the major primary global maritime choke point. So it's kind of good to kind of understand these before we understand why what is going on in Red Sea is so critical. So in Red Sea, we heard that there is one Indian ship. The Houthis have been causing trouble, but on 23rd of December, there was a ship called MV Sai Baba, and this is the picture of that ship which got attacked by 4 drones from the Houthi rebels. There was actually a US ship close by which apparently shot down the drone. And then there's a story within that story. We'll go through it, but that is the story that our media gave, Pentagon gave, that there was Iranian Houthi kind of drones which attacked this ship and we took it down. This is 23rd of December. And on this is another ship which got attacked. This is MV Camp Pluto. Now, this was a ship which was headed from. This was not attacked in that area which I talked about close to Yemen. This was actually attacked just off the coast of India, around only 200 nautical miles from Gujarat, and its name is MV Camp Plateau, a Japanese ship operated by a Dutch company, but mostly Indian crew and primarily Indian cargo, taking oil from Saudi Arabia to Mumbai. And this was actually attacked not by one Iranian military drone, and and we'll talk about why it is so significant that this ship got attacked. So this is a more closer up picture of it. You know what happened? I think it happened in just 24 hours. So you see here, this is on the left bottom side of your screen, and probably you can see my cursor on the picture as well. Um, while I'm at, let me quickly check if people can. I'm not getting any comments. Okay, hopefully everybody can watch it. Okay, people who are watching the live stream on Twitter, if you can't hear me or anything, just make sure you comment so I can see your comments. If you have questions, I can take questions. You can join the Twitter space and ask your questions, or you can also write your questions on the live stream that is happening on the Twitter. So there you can just write your question. Okay. Anyways, let's come back to this picture. So you see this. This is the Red Sea, and up in the north is Suez Canal where the ships enter, and then they kind of travel in straight line. And you see this narrow kind of a choke point here. This is the choke point where, and this is Yemen, and the Houthi. It's pretty easy for the Houthi rebels to disrupt all the traffic here. You block this, and you're done. You start hitting ships there, and there's hardly any ship that can pass through. And this is where they have been causing trouble. And and this is where you might have heard in the news that US has formed some kind of a global coalition with 10 different countries and asked them to kind of protect the traffic which is now going through this narrow strait. So this is where the ship called MV Sai Baba, when it was crossing, it got attacked by 4 drones, and apparently the US ship kind of tackled those drones. Now there is the other ship that we talked about, the MV Camp Pluto, was actually, it started its journey from Al Jubail on 12th of December, and it was going to 12th or 20, 12th of December, and it kind of went through this way, and this is the other choke point that we talked about, and the ship was actually hit somewhere here close to the Gujarat coast, and by a quote unquote Iranian drone. And we'll talk about this news that whether it was hit by an Iranian drone. The Iranians have denied it, but the Pentagon has confirmed it. But it was first actually broken by another company called Embrace Analytics, and we will talk about the significance of this aspect, that who broke this news. But apparently that is the mainstream news, that the Iranian drone kind of attacked it right here. The ship, it's said, caught some fire, also took some water, but the damage was controlled. And the last I checked was yesterday. It was very close to Bombay. I think it should have docked in Bombay by now. And you can actually check all these ships. There are different tools. There's the live marine info kind of a website. You can actually see all the ships which are going, all the incidents which happen on the ship. So the one question that really, really kind of just puts you off is that kind of stands out in this instance is Iran is quote unquote a friend of India. On paper, Iran is very, very friendly to India. Iran has never been, Iran has been ostracized, has been sanctioned, but India, has traditionally enjoyed very good relationships with Iran. So why would Iran kind of attack this? This kind of signals a deterioration in the relationship between Iran and India if they did it. Secondly, it's kind of quite it's notable that they chose to attack the ship when ship was very close to the Indian coastline. Like there was a there was a possibility you could have attacked the ship here, you could have attacked the ship here. Ideally, you could have attacked the ship in the choke point here. But what are the reasons that that the whosoever did it attacked chose to attack the ship just 200 nautical miles of Bombay? So that also raises question about capability. Who has that capability? The Iranians for sure do have that capability. They have certain drones. We'll talk about those drones, which can go almost like this is the drone they have. Shaheed 136 have been extensively used in the Ukraine war by the Russians, supplied by the Iranians. 200 kg weight, can carry a warhead for 50 kgs, has an operational range on paper of 2,500 kilometers. So not kind of, Iran does have the capability to do that. But the question is, why would they kind of hit the container, the oil container, when it is so close to to the Indian coastline? So that raises a lot of, and then there is another aspect. So before we go to like who broke that news, the news was broken by Ambre Analytics. It is a maritime intelligence and security company. So when I say maritime intelligence and security, what I mean is they provide maritime intelligence, and that's why they are the ones who broke this news. But they also provide maritime security. Let us say you have ships and you need security, they will provide you security ships which will kind of go along with your ship and kind of protect your ship in high seas. And so them knowing this information first and breaking it is not out of turn. But there is something interesting about Ambre Analytics. Ambre Analytics is actually owned by Ocean Infinity, was acquired by Ocean Infinity. It was a European company, but was acquired by Ocean Infinity in 2021. It's an Austin, Texas-based company, which has close ties with the American defense establishment. It does a lot of oceanographic work. So the association doesn't mean something, but interesting to kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Another interesting thing, which we'll talk about later in this is that this Red Sea area, is not just critical from a shipping standpoint, and probably even more critical it is from the telecommunication standpoint. Because you see, all the telecommunication cables, the undersea cables, which connect the rest of the world to Asia, travel through this kind of bucket, actually underneath this sea. So, if tomorrow they get the capability to do an undersea operation, like Americans kind of did it in the Nord Stream pipeline, very soon we all in India could be sitting without internet or communication with the rest of the world. Not like we don't sit in India, but whosoever is sitting there. So very, very critical area, and a lot of damage can be done. A lot of disruption can be brought onto the world by anybody who wants to do any mischief in this area. Okay. Now let me bring it back to, let me show you a bit, closely how that whole area is kind of. So this is where the Houthi rebels are operating. Let me show you how narrow this stuff is. You see this? And this is that narrow area through where ships have to pass, and nothing passes through the northern side. So everything has to go through somewhere here. And there's one lane going up, one lane coming down. So you can imagine, that everybody is kind of coming in a line. Nobody can come like side by side here. It's a very narrow lane. Everything is traveling, and then if Houthis want to do anything, it's pretty easy to choke this area up. So, and then the ship that we talked about for that traveled from Al Jubail, it basically took this route and kind of was coming towards Mumbai before it got hit somewhere here. And so there are a lot of other interesting things that are happening. So that is my one question, like who did it? And we'll take like the official stand by US is, the Pentagon is, saying that the ship that got hit by the drones here was the Houthi drones. But Iranians are giving us a different story. Obviously, we Iranians don't have that big a credibility per se as such. But it's interesting to kind of even hear their story. They are making up a story that the we had a Houthis had a surveillance drone operating in that area, and the Americans overreacted, and they actually started firing at the surveillance drone. So Houthis apparently have surveillance, and uh, and it is the Americans which hit the Indian tanker. So they are kind of putting it on the Americans. I doubt that story, but interesting. And they totally deny, the Iranians have totally denied. Their foreign minister came out and he totally denied if that there was an Iranian drone which hit this kind of the MV Camp Pluto shot of the Gujarat coast, and they're basically saying it's just an American false flag operation. So two narratives. One is that the Iranians did it. The other is that the Americans did it. So in both the cases, it's a very very interesting narrative because yeah, pardon my use of word interesting because it might be a very dangerous narrative, but it is what it is. Because if the Iranians are doing it, which probably is the more probable cause, then it shows that the Russia China Iran nexus is not very happy with how India has been playing its cards and playing both sides of the aisle, and they are probably trying to signal to India that it needs to be fully on their side, and if not, then it can indicate that there is probably a conflict brewing up between India and China and Pakistan in this region, because in the region of Kashmir, we already know that the Chinese and Indian armies have been eyeball to eyeball with some quote unquote disengagement since last 2 or 3 years in this area, the northern area, and I'm going to just zoom in a bit. This whole area of Ladakh, Kamchushul, sorry, it's kind of moving around, and there's a whole this whole area is disputed, and these all the three armies are operating here, and things have been kind of in a balance. So if there is a kind of a soaring of relationship between India and China and Iran, there's a very real possibility that something can open up in this area. Secondly, if this is not the Iranians and the Chinese and the Americans doing it, then the reason is that the Americans are basically then making up an excuse to attack Iran. That could be the only explanation that I could think of, until and unless somebody else can provide a good explanation. So if they are trying to do it, that itself is a dangerous situation as such. With that being said, let me just invite a couple of speakers who can then comment on what do you guys think, what's going on here. This is all what I could gather, and while all this is happening, there's a very very interesting thing going on with the Indian foreign minister rushing off to on an unplanned, I don't know if it was a planned visit, I think it was unplanned, unplanned visit to Russia, and like on the Christmas Eve. So he just updated this 13 hour back, which is just on the Christmas Eve. He said arrived in Moscow. Look forward to my engagement. This is Mr. Jayashankar outside. And it's kind of very interesting the imagery which is coming out of his visit. Okay, so we'll talk about that a bit as we go through it. And he arrived there, and then he's apparently meeting. Like he put up this picture with some kind of remembrance that he was here like even 50 years back, and then he's kind of meeting all these strategic community of Russia on an unplanned visit. And so there's something brewing up. I'm not able to put exactly my finger on it, but something very very interesting to kind of keep a note on. Okay, if anybody else can. Okay, Bagi Jabasha is saying everything is perfect. Okay, so he says he can hear me out. Okay, can people take speaker on Twitter Space? Anybody have any questions? Feel free to join. Nobody's taking the speaker. but I'm going to send you some requests. I hope it's not a bug. So while people can ask for speaker, I can keep taking you through what I. Okay, yeah, Mr. Server has joined us. I think he has joined us the first time, if I'm not wrong. Uh, Hanji Server Sahab, Assalamu alaikum.
जी सलाम alaikum, Harjeet Singh bhai. My only question, and it's just a simple and curious question. Was there any damage, visible damage, a video of any damage done to either of the ships? That would be my question. Thank you.
Yeah. Damage has been reported in quote unquote reports which have come out. And however, there is no pictures or video that have been shown where the actual damage is shown, which I find kind of, a bit strange. But kind of, yeah, I kind of noticed it as well. Like, why there are no pictures coming out. Well, like everybody reported in US mainstream media, and it got reported widely in the Indian media, also in the Iranian media, but there's no like pictures that have been shared.
Yeah, yeah. My question, Habibai, was because as you see the situation in Gulf between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and then Israel and other countries, and their focus immediately is Iran for sure, and on the other hand, the unprecedented, I would say, support or very vocal support from Indian side for Israel. So I don't want to like allege anything. It's just like we are trying to analyze it.
Yeah.
So I would say it seems to be on its face, a nexus between Israel, uh, USA, and India. And it could be a story they concocted because you see, if any firing would be done by a drone, it can literally destroy the ship. It will make an oil spill in the Gulf, and which is a very serious situation, and we don't see anything like that. So that's what triggered my question. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure seeing you, and I just come here and listen, to my Punjab. I'm from Lahore, by the way, and I listen to your Punjabi and I enjoy it very well. You're like brothers to us. Thank you very much.
ਨਹੀਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਏ ਤੇ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਤੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਵੈਸੇ ਹੀ ਗੋਡੇ ਗੋਡੇ ਚਾਹ ਚੜ ਜਾਂਦਾ। ਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਤਾਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਹੀ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ ਲਾਹੌਰ ਦੀ ਕੀ ਕਰੀਏ, ਪਿਆਰ ਹੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੈ ਸਾਡਾ, ਤਾਂ ਮੱਕਾ ਸਭ ਕੁਝ ਉੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਹੈ। ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਹੈ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ
ਰੱਬ
ਬਹੁਤ।
ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਖੁਸ਼ ਰੱਖੇ, ਬੜੀ ਬੜੀ ਮਿਹਰਬਾਨੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸੁਣਨਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਥੋੜੀ ਫਰਕ ਹੈ, ਬਟ ਮੇਰੀ ਵਾਲਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਜੀ, ਉਹ ਹਾਲ ਬਾਜ਼ਾਰ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ ਤੋਂ ਨੇ।
ਓਕੇ।
So that's where they migrated from. So with that connection we have with you, and you see my love for Sevak Ji. Like my even my name here is Sevak Ji. But thank you so much. It's always a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Same here, Saji. But I think you have made a very valid hypothesis out here, which to me seems probably the most probable hypothesis. That it is like a story probably created to because there's a nexus. We know there's definitely a nexus between US and Israel and India. India is kind of, I think it's kind of a ping pong ball. On Monday it had a nexus with US, on Tuesday it had a nexus with Russia. It's kind of trying to play the both sides. And so but Russia, like India, in my books, like, it's, if push comes to shove, is going to be on the Russian side. It's not going to be on the American side. But in this one, it could be something to. And if I got it right, you're saying it could be something to create excuse for putting pressure on Iran, and keep okay, now we have an excuse to do some military operation against Iran in case Iran kind of moves against Israel in a big way. Was that your hypothesis?
That is correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Yeah, as we talk, the situation in Israel has developed. There are unconfirmed reports by certain big Twitter handles that the Iranians have sent in certain actual foot soldiers, and they are kind of actually on the border from Syria, and also Hezbollah has kind of upped the ante a bit. They have still remained outside the conflict, but it seems there is kind of a threat of invasion from Syria and Lebanon, and also there has been a cyber attack in Israel, where I think there is I'll just put it up here. Mario kind of just shared it. Mm, So he said reports of thousands of Iranian militia forces being deployed in area near Israeli border, and there's also a power outage, which is purportedly a Iranian cyber attack. And where is it gone? Yeah, and there are kind of all kind of reports up there. But you're right, there could be like U.S. creating an excuse for operation against Iran. But let's play both these things out. If it is U.S. creating a excuse for a military operation against Iran, I'm kind of surprised. Like, how will the US even do it? Because the US military presence in this area, I don't think is great. After they pulled out from Pakistan and they left Afghanistan, the only base that I am aware of that has big US presence is actually in Bahrain or in Qatar, if I'm not wrong. So, so the big question is, if US wants to do a military operation against Iran, do they even have the capability to do that? I don't know if somebody has a view or knows a bit about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go too hypothetical, but the still the raw hypothesis here would be that yes, reportedly or allegedly, U.S. does have some bases in Pakistan. You know,
Oh.
and that is why you see the turmoil in Pakistan politics and the visit of the Pakistani army chief and all that. It seems to be all connected. They want to exert pressure on Iran because Iran may not have a nuclear weapon, but they are super scared because they have like very literate population and very effective when it comes to an Islamic war or so. So I would not rule out the possibility of U.S. using Pakistani bases at any time. That would be my take on that.
Oh, wow, wow. That is news, Sarva. Sound like also there are rumors of it, and that okay, great. It'll be very it it will be a really well kept secret if they have. I know they have ability to probably operationalize very soon any military base in Pakistan, because these armies have kind of almost what they call interoperability to certain extent between US and Pakistan. But for them being able to do it secretly without the information not getting leaked out will be phenomenal. Yeah, Nonihalji, go ahead.
Uh, But I think with my assessment of the situation, like based on what I read in the news articles, the reason like why that particular vessel was chosen is It's not like just because of like there was an Indian vessel, based on the news which was published by Al Jazeera and a bunch of other media publications like Reuters and Times of Israel. So that ship was actually an Israeli affiliated merchant.
Yeah.
Although, like, I think there was like, if I'm not wrong, I think it was shipping crude oil from Saudi Arabia to India, but like the vessel was actually Israeli affiliated. So, and this was like the reason which was given by all these articles which are out there, and that's why like the Houthis chose to attack this particular week vessel. I'm not able to see any direct connection of like, although I'm trying to listen to the conversation you guys are having about the Indian involvement in this, but definitely like the Israel is doubling down on its already like floating the narrative which they're trying to like float around that Iran is behind like all these attacks and everything, and we should take some action against that. So they're trying to definitely fuel down this agenda. But the only Indian link which I'm able to see is like it's just happened to be like an Indian vessel, but the reason why it was chosen was because of the Israeli links.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, there are two ships. The MV Sai Baba, which was kind of purportedly hit here, um, and I'm pretty sure like the vehicle which was hit purportedly in this near Yemen, it has to be some kind of a hit, because it can't just be totally fake news, because it would have had actually people who can watch it. It's a very narrow lane. I'd be surprised if they kind of can fake something here. And yeah, the mystery could be surrounding about the hit on the off the Gujarat coast. And you are right, both the ships are actually Israeli linked, like the MV Camp Pluto, the one which hit off Gujarat coast, is a Japanese owned Dutch operated with an Indian crew carrying an Indian cargo, which is not actually very, not really to my knowledge, in the maritime kind of trade. That's not very, that's a very usual scenario, that some company owns the ship, some company operates the ship, and then the cargo belongs to certain country, and then generally like the the cargo belongs to that country, and then the crew tends to also be these ships tend to do the same route all the time. And so in that sense, if this ship was a regular ship which was constantly taking oil from doing to and fro between Al Jubail and India, and was constantly used on that kind of cargo, bringing that crude oil from there to India, then I would kind of treat it that there's a decent Indian connection. But yes, on this Yemen, the one that happened in Yemen, you are right. On the Houthi one, the Indian connection is there. It's not that strong. But irrespective, uh, it's kind of and then it's worth noting to your point that it was not the only ship that they have tried to hit. I think there have been 15 other ships that they have tried to hit in this area. So it could happen that this is one of the ships which is also Israeli affiliated and they targeted. So yeah, that's true as well. But if the Indian connection is just happenstance, and then that's fine. But then we have to see it in the light of, I'm kind of saying the Indian connection might not be the happenstance because of what all the Indian foreign ministers and NSA have been doing all this while. Indian NSA was in Iran on a secret visit just a couple of weeks back. That visit was not announced, advertised. I came to know of it because one of the Indian analysts actually ended up mentioning it on a live interview, not on a live interview, on a recorded YouTube interview. And that Indian analyst is pretty well connected, and he was very sure. He's saying, "Okay, Ajit Doval is actually in Iran. They won't fly, false kind of a news like this." So, and then It seems almost in desperation. I don't know how you guys look at it. Why suddenly, Jay Shankar in Russia on a 5 day visit, and that too, like on Christmas Eve. Like it seems almost like a desperate kind of jump, like as if something is going to drop on their head. I don't know what you think about this visit.
Ajit I want to give like a quick 2 cents on the Jaishankar statement which was out during this visit. So I want to read it out like one line which I find the most interesting from that visit. So he is saying that like an open and forward-looking interaction with leading representatives of the Russian strategy community spoke about the importance of rebalancing and the emergence of multipolarity. So I want to stress on the importance of like rebalancing and the multipolarity, the two words that he used. And we have been noticing this pattern where Jaishankar and other senior officials from India are continuously mentioning about like a multipolar world and how now it's a high time that we should start rebalancing the power and everything. So the basic assumption is over here is like the USA has been on the forefront of this power dynamics like after the World War II, and now it's a high time that the world should divide or maybe divide it into a multipolar world, and everybody should be free from making the laws and like based on that. And it's especially important because this statement is coming in while he was visiting Russia. So I don't. So I think like we can draw some conclusions, right, from why the statement is coming in the recent light of events and all the tussle which is already going on between the West and India. Um, so yeah, I would love to hear like what other people have to say on this, and I would keep on adding like my remarks and my observations around that, and would also be great like if we can discuss a little bit on how the China is acting in this whole power play.
No, yeah, I think you kind of hit it on the nail when you talked about, India prefers a multipolar world any given day, preferably with as many poles as possible because then they can play one against the other. Uh, and and it kind of gives them the space to do whatever they want to do internally within India, especially with this, single party government, which has a very nationalistic kind of an agenda. They will prefer to have a multipolar world. Now, to my reading on that is, you see the word. You're right. He's talking about the rebalancing and emergence of multipolarity. So, what he's probably also with rebalancing, I think he's saying is that there has to be now a renegotiation of who has how much say in the international matters and how much we kind of give weight to different relationships. And then he is kind of assuming that there is a multipolarity and it's going to exist, and he's basically solidifying that idea. I was actually listening to an Indian analyst yesterday, and somebody said, "Oh, there are four poles, quad poles," and then he said, "No, no, no, there are it's octagonal." So they're talking about eight poles, like eight different poles in the world, and they're talking about that like nobody's in charge basically, and the world is trying to find its feet in this eight pole different world. No, so okay, fine, that could be India's agenda, but does that align with America and China's agenda? I doubt it so. So my reading is that the way things are panning out, India is kind of painting itself in a very, very dark corner because India has calculated in its kind of books that that America has become very weak and is very divisive. China is powerful. Russia is powerful but not very powerful. But so in this world, we can basically take whatever we want from the US and whatever we want from China, keep them pacified, and the world will be a good place. And if there's a conflict, it's going to be between China and US, and that's the calculation. And both of them is going to further weaken due to that conflict. And India can basically, even handle economic isolation, political isolation, and whatnot. But I think what they have probably not calculated in that kind of paradigm, and it's right, India can take economic isolation. India was economically isolated before 92. But I think what they have not calculated is a very real possibility of a military conflict. If somebody actually brings war on the doors of India, then, well, is that something that they can even they are in a position to even sustain, or India might just fall apart like a pack of cards. And I think they are kind of hedging on it, that okay, we are a nuclear power, and nobody's going to kind of try that with us, because nuclear powers don't go to wars. And that I probably is their calculation. But I doubt it. And why I say that India is kind of in a corner is because India is not delivering anything either to US or to China. So if you guys have noticed, like I have been noticing it for almost since this new single party government came in power. And let me pull up some of these articles. And why, if you Google this, why MNCs are leaving India, there's a very nice article by, actually it came out last year, but I was seeing it, for almost 6 years now. And almost every major American business was made to leave India by this government. So while quote unquote India is a growing economy, blah blah blah, it has not delivered anything to American businesses or the Western businesses. And there are numbers: 10,756 foreign companies were registered. 2,783 closed their operation, and the ones which closed are the big names: um, Ford, General Motor, Harley Davidson, Man Trucks, and then there are other companies. And then in banking sector as well, you had, Citibank leaving, etc., etc. It's a long list of businesses. And so US probably lost all the economic attraction of India had gone down. But it's the same thing which is happening with the Chinese businesses. The Chinese businesses, if you read Global Times, they have lately been talking about, that India has been, trying to kind of, shut down Chinese businesses. If you go to Global Time, so India has lost I would say, the economic attraction for China as well as India. And not just this, with China, India has been playing a very, very negative role in the SCO. China negotiated this RCEP agreement, which would have created a free trade from Vietnam up till Iran. And the only country which refused last minute to sign was India. So India is kind of right now a problem for China in terms of getting good economic cooperation and trade flowing within Asia, which obviously is in the interest of China and everybody else. But for some reasons, India does not feel like that uh, that Asia should become one market, and which actually is contrary to the interest of Indian people. But to some extent, it is almost thinking that I'm also thinking that probably the Indian regime doesn't even think from an Indian people's interest. I think the Indian regime has very different kind of a nationalistic, especially Hindu nationalistic goals. And so they are not wary of sacrificing the economic interest of India. But anyways, so that's what India has played that very negative role in RCEP, which they refused to sign in March this year. India is part of BRICS, but their contribution in BRICS, kind of forming a positive agenda, has been very little. And then India is kicking out Chinese businesses. India did allow a lot of imports from China. Its economic relationship with China really grew in last 2 3 years. But just having imports is not good enough. Ultimately, Chinese companies want to invest in India, and what India has lately been doing is trying to kick out Chinese businesses from investing in India and putting all the investment in the name of Adani's and Ambani's. A recent case in point was when India did bought out that licensing regime again for electronic goods. So today, to import any laptop into India, you need a license. So, so that's going on. But India could still have played both sides if India was delivering something militarily to, or India could have gotten some benefit from US by being the military counterweight to China. On that front as well, I don't think India has given anything tangible to US in that partnership. There is this, agreement which happened for sharing of logistical support of US ships for in Indian Ocean, which is significant. But how much progress has been made on it, and there are next steps that need to happen. Like there was supposed to be GE engines that US was supposed to deliver to India. They are on hold. There were other technologies that US was supposed to deliver to India. They are, like the drones and all, they are on hold. Same way, Russia put it on hold, their S-400 delivery to India. And India is kind of, India have been working with Russia to have them accept payments in rupee, which Russia has totally refused now. So it seems like India is trying to do this balancing act between both both the Russian and Chinese bloc versus the US bloc. But I'm getting suspect. I'm doubting how good that balancing is, and have they run out of that balancing. But anyways, anybody wants to have a thought on that? Go ahead, Nolan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think like I want to touch down on like the fundamentals of where this multipolar world term is originating from. So if you do a quick research on where this term originated from and how this is being propagated, so I would recommend like everybody just do a quick Twitter search with the term multipolar, and that would clear out a lot of things where this propaganda is being fueled from. So majority of the tweets, like or the influencers, you can say, who are tweeting about this are coming in from the BRICS nation, as we see it. I would say to a lesser extent from China, but like to a larger extent from Russia and a lot of like Indian sources nowadays as well, including the top officials. So the theory, so the theory that they're moving forward is like, for example, like I sent a tweet about from this guy called Danny Hifong, like who is the biggest proponent of this multipolar theory and a very influential person with over like 113K followers, and he also has a podcast. So his tweet says the biggest threat to peace today are the US, NATO, Israel, and the EU. The biggest friends to peace are China, Russia, and their allies in the multipolar world. The facts you'll never hear in the Western mainstream media. So there is an attempt over here to label the Western nations and the NATO to be warmongers and a threat to global peace. So we gotta like understand this narrative, like who is threatening the world peace and where this idea is coming from, and how they're trying to like correlate all these ideas with the Western world, and you will never see them talking about the warmongering actions of Russia on the Ukraine war and China to an extent on the Taiwan issue and the Hong Kong issue and all the conflicts they're having in the Southeast Asia region. So we gotta be like really careful and understanding like if it is a real thing, if it is a tangible thing, this multipolar world, or is it a propaganda which is fueled from the BRICS nation to basically challenge the hegemony of the West, and I would say not just the West, but the Western values to a larger extent, which includes freedom of expression and individual sovereignty and the right to like follow the religions. So all these things are basically under threat because of the so-called multipolar world that they're trying to create. And now it is out in the open, like the cat is already out of the bag, that India, which like claimed to be the largest democracy in the world, is openly talking about these ideas. Like you would never see India criticizing the actions which Russia is taking against Ukraine and all the other nations in the past. So this hypocrisy is like already out there. So I think that we got to be like really careful about this multipolar world theory which is being put forward by all these BRICS nations.
I think you've raised a very valid point. I actually did a research search when you were talking about it, and you were damn right. It's all these, pro-Russian quote like new, ultra. They project themselves as ultra conservatives, but like those handlers which are constantly kind of raising this, U.S. is the war monger, and Russia is such a peaceful country. The country which actually attacked or invaded Ukraine, which was actually a democratic country, and was on path of actually progress, and it has destroyed that country totally. And but you are very right, like it has those kind of handles. And interestingly, Nonihalji, this theory that it was a false flag operation is also coming from a Twitter handle, which is in the same way like you talked about right now. These are those Twitter handles which are constantly, they're based out of US, but they are constantly showing bad mouthing or projecting US as this evil kind of regime which is actually doing all this stuff. Um, and and there and it would have been fine, if they would have balanced it with the criticism of Russia. But like what gives away their kind of play is because you will never hear them say anything bad about Russia and India or China. And we know, what kind of regimes these countries are. And people who have lived in Russia, they can talk, but people like us who've lived in India, we know what India is. India is not the biggest democracy in the world. It is actually the biggest authoritarian regime in the world. And even China is better than India in many aspects. And so the question is like, is there a larger conspiracy? So do you think like it is primarily this whole effort of creating this multipolarity narrative is, it seems like, I think it's more like India and Chinese led. I see more like Indian handle and no, not Chinese, India and Russian led. Like I see a lot of Russian handles, a lot of US based handles, a lot of Indian handles. I'm not sure if I see a lot of Chinese kind of on this, but what's your take? Is it a joint project between Russia, China, and India, or it's mostly Russia and India?
Yeah, I think Deepaji, as I've already mentioned, so most of this agenda is like being fueled from Russian-backed Twitter handles or I would say influencers. They're posting it everywhere, and there are a lot of books as well written on this topic. And yeah, I don't see too many Chinese people like getting involved in this agenda. Maybe that you might find a few tweets here and there from Chinese handles, but most of it is coming in from those two places which we talked about. But I think that the bigger question that agenda is targeted to for, like, I mean, like, what are they trying to do, like, by putting forward this narrative, and who's the target audience of this narrative? That's a really important question that we need to answer. So if you see, so right now, like if you go to any colleges or universities in the US, or maybe to a larger extent in most of the Western world, so you see this anti-war kind of narrative, which is like generally running amongst the younger population, where I mean, we saw this happening like during the Vietnam War, right? We saw this happening during the Manhattan Project, and now we see all these things like repeating back and back over and over again, right? So we gotta really understand like what are they trying to do? Like so there is an image of the Western world which is being created in the minds of the younger people,
Yeah.
that the countries that you're living in, so you're enjoying your freedoms, you're able to do all
Yeah.
whatever you can. They are not in your favor, and the countries like who are basically suppressing their own people and
Yeah.
like every year, like thousands of people are like running away from the wars which are being waged by those countries. Like they are the actual beacon of freedom. And so we gotta really be careful like about like who the target audience of this agenda is.
Yeah. No, no, that's right. I think I was amazed when I came to this United States in 2013, and I was flabbergasted by the freedom you have, how you can live your life, and and the first time I tasted freedom per se myself. But what kind of equally flabbergasted me was how much the American youth itself hated America, and that's the word I'm using. And it's all propaganda. Like you go to these universities, most of these are controlled by these left-leaning professors who are constantly talking about how capitalism is so bad and how like they are not able to have the next best iPhone because capitalism is bad. So it's kind of craziness, honestly. Like and I didn't. I was thinking till now it's just a natural phenomena where society has become so prosperous that you are kind of finding different means to kind of do kind of what next kind of stuff. But now I'm getting convinced to a certain extent that there is a lot of foreign interference happening, and probably it is all Russian and Indian led, because most of the people who are kind of forwarding this kind of an agenda. And I think to your question, this is my hypothesis and you can pitch in. I think this is directed at creating divisions within US, political divisions, and kind of making then the American establishment to become more inward looking rather than outward looking. Because once you have more divisions inward, you're constantly focused upon, okay, how do I kind of handle this problem, and then which is inside my house, and then and then you basically withdraw from outside. And the moment the American power becomes more inward looking, and then like there's space created for these authoritarian regimes like Russia, North Korea, India, to do whatever they want to do with their people. And because their primary goal is to primarily first kind of beat down on the head of their own people, and then kind of probably take on the next country next door. That's what these authoritarian regimes basically dream about all day. The kind of the free world that we call only exists, the I would say west of Germany, and that also maybe some parts of Europe and US primarily. So, what's your take? Like, is that what they are after? Kind of weaken US through internal divisions?
Yeah, I think like that's more or less a true statement because like since World War II happened, the world mostly has been like under relative peace. I know like
Hmm.
we saw like a lot of conflicts which happened after the World War II, but like nothing to the extent of like nothing even closer to the extent of the damages that we saw in both world wars. So I think like more so and after the establishment of the United Nations, so there have been this sort of like world order which was maintained, and a platform was given to all the countries, like be it democratic or be it autocratic, to have some sort of like avenue to do some negotiations or like have some sort of talks and trying to solve the situations using peaceful means. Um, but I think the way things are going on in on the eastern front, especially like the countries which are more on the authoritarian side, is like as you pointed out earlier, they have this impression that the West, which is led by the US, is they feel that they are in a weaker position compared to before, and it is easier than ever to basically undermine or challenge the relative order which West was successfully able to maintain for all these years. And if they're able to successfully do it, then yeah, so their target audience is probably not like maintaining the global peace and order is basically like to have some sort of like authoritarian, like typically what the authoritarian regimes do, which is like suppressing the people and undermining their human rights, which we saw happening in all these countries which we are talking about. So all these are increasing every day. The intensity of all these incidents, like against their own people, are increasing every day. And not just like it's not just like restricted to their own borders. We see this happening and spilling over to other countries as well. Like so, be it the Russian-Ukrainian conflict or like all this situation which is happening in Yemen or a lot of other places in the world. Uh, so it is definitely a challenge. They're posing a challenge to the relative stability that we saw in the last few decades, and they're trying to suppress their own people. They're trying to use this opportunity to suppress their own people. Yeah, I feel that assessment is accurate.
Yeah, I had actually, I had downloaded a clip of this very, very senior, actually, ex RNAW officer. His name is RK Sharma. You can probably, let me share my screen here so you guys can see him. Uh, you guys can probably, see his, see him on the screen. Um, Let me just, okay, sound. I'll try to play this out, play him out a bit here for you guys. People who are on the Twitter stream, they can probably see this guy. Just give me a sec. I'm having some, okay, here it is. So to your point, I've been listening to and kind of closely listening what is the strategic thinking going on in the Indian establishment and, these so-called, salesmen of multipolarity, and they have a very, very skewed worldview themselves, it seems, and very sinister, I have to say. And it seems like they're acting as if they are US or Western's West friend, but the idea is to basically undermine West. And and this particular, and this is the theme I hear from them all the time. And I'm going to play this out a bit, and hopefully the everybody can listen out what this gentleman, if I can call him so, is saying. Let me try to play it out. Okay. Internal speakers here. Okay. Let's try to do it again. अगर वो सब बैकअप हो गया, मतलब पिछले 25 साल से उन्होंने जो कुछ सब किया वो सब वेस्ट हो गया, तो यहाँ से बैकअप का ऑप्शन अमेरिका के पास है नहीं। वो इस डेडली कॉन्फ्लिक्ट में आ चुका है। एक तरफ चाइना है, एक तरफ रशिया है, एक तरफ ये हारा हुआ अलायंस है और हिंदुस्तान। Unfortunately, we are right in the middle of that global geostrategic battle between these two sides. Now, what does it do? ये global new world order है, इसका निर्धारण भारत ही करेगा। ये दोनों साइड को पता है। सबसे ज्यादा संभावना इस बात की है कि अगले 20 साल में भारत ये कर देगा और बिना इनकी या उनकी सहायता के अपनी खुद की ताकत पे, अपने खुद की हिम्मत पे और अपने खुद की जनता के विश्वास पे, क्योंकि भारत के आइडिया पे जनता को अभी भी पूरी तरह विश्वास है। ये अमेरिका की तरह का आइडिया नहीं है सोसाइटी को बना देगा। एक अमेरिकन ड्रीम टाइप एक इनोवेशन था कि आप सब पैसा कमा दो, पैसा कमा के गाड़ी ले लो, गाड़ी लेके मकान बना दो, मकान लेने के बाद अपने रिक्शा करने में रहो, अपने ऑफिस जाओ, वापिस आओ और आपकी जिंदगी बन चुकी है, आप हमेशा सुखी रहोगे इससे। वो 70 के दशक में बनाया गया, 60 के दशक में बनाया गया मिथक था, 80-90 आते तक खत्म हो गया। अब वो मिथक पूरी तरह से टूट चुका है। अमेरिकन ड्रीम इज डिसॉल्व्ड। किसी को उसमें विश्वास नहीं है। जो बच्चे लोन लेके 3 शिफ्ट काम करके अपने स्टूडेंट लोन को चुका रहे, उनसे आप अगर ये विश्वास कराएं कि अमेरिका में विश्वास करके, तो वो नहीं कर पाए। अमेरिका की बहुत बड़ी जनरेशन है जो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन है अमेरिका के आइडिया से, लेकिन वहां पे कैपिटलिस्ट है, वहां पे ऐसे लोग हैं जिनके पास वो संपत्ति है, एलन मस्क और उन लोगों को चाहिए कि वो व्यवस्था बरकरार रहे। अब वो उस व्यवस्था को कैसे बरकरार रहेंगे, क्योंकि उनके भयंकर स्टेक्स इन बोर्ड बिलियनियर्स हैं, उन सब बिलियनियर्स के स्टेक इन बोर्ड है that अमेरिका is institution survive, और वो कैसे करेंगे उसको, ये सवाल है बहुत महत्वपूर्ण। तो वो सब जो बिलियनियर्स हैं, उन लोगों ने अपने कार्टेल बना रखे, वो इस तरह की पॉलिसीज को इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे हैं। ऑलरेडी जो टेक जाइंट्स हैं अमेरिका में,
अब भारत कैसे लिखेगा ये नया संविधान जो कि नया ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर बने, ये भारत के सामने सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज। क्योंकि भारत को ऐसे करने से रोकने के लिए पचासों शक्तियां ऐसा, लेकिन भारत को ऐसा करने देने के लिए शक्ति सिर्फ भारत के पास। कोई एक्सिस्टिंग पावर या इमर्जिंग पावर ये नहीं चाहेगा कि भारत एक बड़ी शक्ति के तौर पे उभरे। इसमें अमेरिका का इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, ब्रिटेन का इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, फाइव अलायंस का इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, इसमें एक तरह से चाइना का भी इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, क्योंकि चाइना एक रीजनल हेजेमोन है, ग्लोबल सुपर पावर है। उसको बिल्कुल मंशा नहीं है कि हिंदुस्तान अगले 50 साल में खड़ा हो पाए और एक ग्लोबल सुपर पावर के तौर पर चाइना को चैलेंज करे। तो ये उसके साथ नहीं मिलेगा। और रशिया के अपने स्टेक्स, वो रशिया भारत के साथ देगा, लेकिन उतना ही देगा जहां से चाइना के उसके स्टेक्स कॉम्प्रोमाइज नहीं हो। ये लोग हमारे साथ देते हुए दिखते हैं, अमेरिका, ब्रिटेन, नेटो अलायंस, लेकिन साथ नहीं दे रहे हैं। ये हमें बांटने का प्रयास करें, ये हमारे भीतर उसके हमारे तंत्र को हथियाने का, हमारे तंत्र को अपनी तरफ चलाने का और हमारे तंत्र से वो कार्रवाई करवाने का जिससे इनका अलायंस और सुदृढ़ होकर नई व्यवस्था में आ जाए, ये कार्रवाई करें। तो ये जो ग्लोबल अलायंस जो ये सब गतिविधि है, इसमें संक्षेप में इतना भी कह सकते हैं कि जैसे ये विश्व युद्ध क्रिकेट का शुरू हुआ, ऐसे नई वैश्विक व्यवस्था का भी विश्व युद्ध शुरू हो चुका है और 3 ग्रुप्स हो चुके हैं और तीसरे ग्रुप का नेतृत्व भारत के पास है, जिसमें ग्लोबल साउथ है और ये दुनिया की उभरती हुई सबसे बड़ी शक्ति है। और ये लड़ाई के और कैपिटल के बजाय शांति के और प्रेम के मॉडल पे एक वैश्विक नई व्यवस्था रखेगा और ये एक हिस्टोरिकल ट्रूथ है, ये होकर रहेगा। इट इज नॉट अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ इफ, इट इज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ व्हेन।
चलो जी, apologies for the background music. ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਭਜੰਗੀ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ energetic ਤੇ you might have heard him shouting in the back end. That's very regular in my household. But anyways, it was a long talk, but hopefully you guys were able to listen to what this raw officer was saying. And if I could, catch what he was trying to convey is basically the Indian establishment sees the new world order as something that they are going to have a big influence on. And I think in their calculation, they've already calculated that America is a weakened and divided power and no more to be taken very seriously. And then they kind of see themselves as a big power player in this entire thing, and in a place where they can actually not only challenge but actually write a new world order. And that I would say is a bit of a stretch of their imagination, I would say, but it is what it is. And so the question is like in such an environment, what does it talk about global security? And the recent actions of the Indian government are also in line with this kind of, I would say, I will call it like almost superfluous or impractical thinking, because I think India is going to be up for rude awakening if they keep on thinking like that America is so weakened that now they can write the world order. But I don't know, like if I hope the sound was not great, I know, but I hope you guys were able to listen to it. Anybody else, anything else they want to add? If anybody wants to speak, they can take it. And I don't have many speakers, but hopefully this talk was useful. And if you don't get many speakers, then I will close this quickly. Okay, if anybody wants a speaker, wants to continue the conversation, please ask for it. Zobaji is saying thumbs up. If anybody has, okay, I'll give it one more minute. Okay, awesome. If not, then that's great. I think it was great. I just wanted to have a quick say. Sarvar Sahab, do you want to add anything before we kind of close? Like, what are the things you think we should be in the lookout for in the immediate future with the way things are panning out, especially in the context of India, Pakistan, and China? That's where I'm more interested. How are things developing in this region? Yeah.
Well, Jeet Singh bhai, I mean, we can talk all we want about this subject. It is It's a very rich subject. It's a very open-ended subject, and it's a very sensitive subject as well. As I see it, I would just put it briefly. India, lately after Modi ji's government has taken over everything, you know, it seems to be very aggressive,
Mm.
and they are acting aggressively as if they are already a superpower. And I think, in my view, their alliance or their dependency on Israel in particular. If you look at Israel, its role in the region where it is situated, and its intentions. I don't think I have to explain it to anyone, what kind of intentions they have. And for India to even support that outrageously as it is, I think it sends a very negative message
Mm.
not only to Pakistan,
Mm.
but to Afghanistan, to Iran, to China, and Russia, the whole region. I think we are at this moment in time, we are very sensitive to any steps that India is taken around us, and therefore I think India will eventually, lose it. I think first of all, it wasn't wise for India to have abandoned Russia, in the first place, and that takes us back to like 70s and wherever. But then again, America, and then wishing to dominate America, or think, there's a saying in Urdu, I guess, कहते हैं कि हाथी वो कहते हैं वो अपना जिंदा लगता ते मरिया सवा लगता, something like that,
Mm.
Right? I mean, it's such a wishful thinking. Look at the people who have come here and acquired like the top jobs, as in Google, as in Apple, you know. But can you smell or feel the changes when they were put as CEOs or CFOs or whatever, in those positions, that they showed where they come from. For example, if like you said, you are here in the US since 13, right? I'm here since 97, I guess. For you to go out and buy an iPhone for $1,200
Mm.
and not get the charger with it, what does it tell you? Does it tell you it was Steve Jobs' idea not to give us a $5 charger, without which you cannot operate that phone? I'm not criticizing anybody in particular. I'm just saying the mindset. When you think you want to take over the world and you want to introduce your ideology, you have to have a very big heart,
Mm.
and you have to be very humble.
Correct.
You have to, in your approach, in
Yeah.
your, you have to end wars, not to initiate wars.
Yeah.
And look at what I mean, how and things are in Kashmir,
Yeah.
right? I'm not. I just want them to be independent. First
Yeah.
of all, I want them to be free of any oppression.
Yeah.
They don't have to come to Pakistan or go anywhere. Kashmir is Kashmir.
Yeah.
It's a land. It's a people.
Yeah.
And look at what they've done with the Punjab. And constantly they try to keep them oppressed.
Yeah.
I would say in the end, just food for thought, kind of Chachara type thing. I was just thinking today, there are two words that I will give you. One is Khalis. Khalis means pure,
Mm.
and one is Pak. And Pak also means clean, and like tidy, clean, and Pak, and pure. You know, so I think that the alliance for Punjabi brothers on the other side of the fence lies with somebody who's Pak and Khalid, that makes a better proposition. That was just like on the side, thing.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think India, even compared to China, stands nowhere close.
Yeah.
So before you are ripe, before you are rich, to go and call the Chaudhary of the area, like the names, you should think twice. India has too many problems to address inside of India. You know, I think if I was running India, my preference would be my people,
Yeah.
not my thinking of, okay, now I have literally taken over England, as my as an Indian prime minister is there. Now I have taken over US
Yeah.
because we have a vice president there. That is not how things work.
Yeah.
Americans should not be taken as a free food,
Yeah.
like a free ride.
Yeah.
They are not that down. They have emerged from very very difficult times, and they have prospered, and they have really excelled. The way, I mean, look, you are living here. Just compare your life in India and your life in here. And I would not rule out. Let's compare both our lives
Yeah.
in China as well. So where do you put America?
Yeah.
I think India needs to change its basic policy, its
Yeah.
thought. So that premise has to be revisited, I think. And I think my wish would be to have a very highly literate leader, leading the country. You know, Something like India. Not as not just religious based, or like
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that would be my ending comment. I'm not going to be very.
Yeah.
Ji, Harjeet Singh.
Yeah.
Thank
No,
you so
no,
much.
that's great. And unfortunately, they're not going to change their thought process unless somebody makes them change it. And that's the sad part. But the fact is that the good aspect, I believe, is that the world has waken up to the problem that we have here. India is still kind of a colonized state with the power in the hand of that few casteist elite who are totally disconnected with the reality of India. We just heard a segment of the thinking that is kind of in their elite. Like we just heard that RNAW officer, and this is evident in their entire mainstream media. India is ranked 111 out of 125 22 countries on global hunger index. India press freedom is ranked below Taliban today, Afghanistan. But here we have India dreaming, or the Indian establishment dreaming to actually defeat America and kind of colonize it and kind of take it down. So India, while on the outwardly it is calling itself a democracy and saying, "Oh, we are friends with you," it's actually not acting as a friend to US. Neither is it acting as a friend, or let's say we don't have to act as a friend. We have to act responsibly. And India's behavior in the region has not been responsible. I would say, especially when it backed out from RCEP, the role it is playing in terms of interfering in the politics within Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Pakistan, Afghanistan, you name it. So, and now with, I think, India has broken camel's back by sending death squads to US. So I think there are a lot of things changing coming. I can't predict what's going to happen, but whatever will happen for the good. So it might have short term pain, but I think I am a firm optimist that eventually the continent will be decolonized. In 1947, the continent, we had a transfer of power. We did not have a redistribution of power. And I think probably that moment has come. With that being said, I think we kind of, we can go quickly recap what we discussed, but maybe not. I think everybody's aware about this. But I want to thank everybody for the time, for coming and listening to me and what's going on, and sharing their views. We'll keep a close eye. I intend to keep a close eye on the geostrategic play in this region and how that impacts, almost 2 billion humanity. So thank you everybody for your time. Talk to you guys later.